Welcome back to another episode of the RAG Report podcast, your daily bulletin show where I bring to you interviews with recruitment owners, suppliers, advisors from around the world to add their take on how they're coping, firstly, with COVID-19 and give opinions on how we can all thrive through this difficult period. Today, on Friday, I'm joined by Toni Camisotti, the founder of Granite Search, a specialist construction recruitment agency headquartered in London, a man who I've worked with for a while and know pretty well. So I'm excited about this conversation. Toni, thanks for taking the time on this Friday lunchtime.
Thanks very much, and thanks for having me, Sean. I must actually make a slight technical change, though. I wasn't the founder. A very sharp lady called Paula Mitchell was our founder, but I am now the owner.
The owner, yeah, you're the owner.
So yes, no, that's all right. That's all right. No biggie.
I do make mistakes, Toni. I do make mistakes. I'm not perfect, even though
That's all right.
I practice a lot, but you're always liable for the odd mistake. But Toni, look, let's get straight into it, mate. What's going on for you right now?
So we're, along with the rest of the world, having a pretty challenging time, balancing trying to keep business as usual with trying to be mindful of employees, supply chain, clients, health.
Yeah.
And pretty much for the last fortnight, it's been painful in terms of business continuity. And really, over the last couple of days, it's been the first time that I've had and know about clients who have been hospitalised and are, sitting at home in bed on ventilators. So it's gone from business continuity to wow, this is impacting on us all in a big way.
Did you see the news in the last hour that Boris Johnson has been?
Yeah, our Prime Minister has contracted it.
It's crazy. Well, you think then the whole cabinet's got it, surely?
Well, you would have thought anybody to do with Cobra, anybody to do with the cabinet, anybody to do with the executive running of this nation has potentially got it, and that's a pretty sobering thought.
Yeah, it's pretty scary.
Yeah.
Well, look, how have you? So tell me what's actually happened in your business. Have you had to make any changes, any decisions that have been forced upon you at this point?
Yeah, so we elected, and we weren't the first, and we're certainly not the only one. We elected the week before last to run a trial day of a virtual office where everybody worked from home. Because we are recruiters. We're social animals, and we struggle working on our own. I think you'd agree we struggle with our own company. So we adopted Zoom, which I think has been a fantastic tool, and we're using it now to keep together in kind of what we call a virtual community, right? In other words, we all log on at 8 o'clock in the morning, we do our usual morning meeting, and then we can see each other during the day. We've also committed to doing our weekly wrap-ups, which we do on a Friday at sort of 3:30, 4 o'clock. We're going to continue doing that with wine and beers virtually, it's the first one today actually, so it could all be a bit bizarre, but got to try.
You know what? We will. Yeah, I think most businesses are trying to do similar things.
Yeah.
I did a virtual beers night on Friday last week with my mates last Friday night, and one of us, well, my brother is one of them. He's in Manchester, and we've got one of my mates lives in South London. The other one's in West London. I'm in East London. So we haven't even. I don't think we've been as a four together since last summer. But this has brought us to do something different, and it was wicked. Like I think I had a good few beers, and it got funny. Like there was some really funny stuff coming out. And my wife was in the other room, and I had my headphones on, and she's just like, you were just laughing for like 2 hours. So it was genuinely good, and I was like, oh, in a way, it's forced us to use technology, but I'd probably still do that because we're not going to travel up to see each other all the time. But it means you don't go months on end without having those conversations. So some good can come of this.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I was talking to one tech guy, and in fact, he's a sales guy for a technology platform.
Right.
And we were talking about whether or not this would be the catalyst for changing how the world works. And, obviously technology has changed how the world interacts. But in terms of how the world works, what we do, it's all about offices and working in offices. And one of our biggest verticals is the London commercial office sector. And actually, would working from home using tools like Zoom fundamentally alter the demand for office space? I've got my own views on it, which I think if you've had as we've discussed, you've had a look at my LinkedIn piece, I'm not sure it's going to radically alter
Right,
it.
so let's get into that then. Tell us what's your opinion on it, Tony?
So I wrote a LinkedIn post entitled "Sod Being a Nomad." Basically, not just because I'm a grumpy old man, but because I can't stand working from home. I miss the social interaction with clients, with candidates, with friends. I like doing a face-to-face. I like shaking hands. I mean, even using Zoom this week, it's great, but it isn't a substitute for me for human interaction.
Yeah. So you're straight away like go back to normal. That's the plan.
Oh, go straight back to normal. Yeah. Although interestingly, so we've been trying to stat and task our guys as normal as possible this week. And ironically, two of them, so, that represents less than 10%, but two of them have actually reckoned they've been more productive working from home. Everybody else has said, no, it's been less productive, more awkward. As far as a platform concerned, Zoom has been pretty bulletproof, but other things haven't.
Yeah.
And I think what we forget when we go to an office is it's not just the interaction and it's not just the human contact. In terms of being in one place where you have technological support, you just don't get that from home. You just don't.
For me, I think working from home would be a lot easier if I didn't have the rest of the house working from home. If you know what I mean. So like that's the biggest difference.
Or just the rest of the house being at home.
Yeah, but that is the biggest thing, right? I think a lot of people are used to doing a day or two a week, and it works fine because everyone's out. You get the house yourself, you plan your day, and you get shit done. Whereas now we're in a different scenario where we're all at home, including our wives, partners, kids, dogs, and it's not necessarily conducive to getting work.
No, it's not conducive to working. I've got, and for two reasons. First of all, they interrupt you. So twice this morning, my little girls have come in, Daddy, Care Bear, Daddy, YouTube, Daddy, Boris has got it. Right. So that's not great. And the second thing is, honestly, would I rather be working or would I rather be playing with the kids? Well, I'd rather be playing with the kids. So on kind of in both ways, there's this tension, and obviously that's without our partners asking us to do, X, Y, and Z when we should be doing a load of work.
Mate, I'm just thankful we put this in because my wife was getting the Hoover out, and I was like, I'm not doing that right now. She's like, what do you mean? I was like, it's lunchtime. I was like, yeah, I've got a podcast to record with Tony.
Yeah, I've got work to do.
I put back by half an hour, and she's not allowed to Hoover either because of the noise level in the background. So you're getting me out of this. I agree. I mean, everyone's got their own unique situation. Let's go more into the market for you because you're construction. So as far as I believe, like most of this week, construction sites have still been open. Is that right?
Right. So this is really interesting. So you would have seen some pretty or you might have seen some pretty high-profile individuals from our industry be interviewed this week. They include, probably most notably, the CEO of Mace, a very smart bloke called Mark Reynolds, and others, and pretty much every CEO of every major contractor has put something out over social media about how they have responded to the COVID-19 threat. The interesting thing really, Sean, is how totally different approaches have been, right? We've got two clients who took a very conservative approach to it. In fact, three clients who have completely shut sites as of last week, right? But in the main, clients have engaged with their clients and consultants, property owners, property developers, end users. They've asked them what they want. And in the main, the feedback I'm getting is that anywhere between 60 and 80% of those end user clients are quite happy to suspend contracts, but not pay for something called prelims. So in other words, 60 to 80% of end user clients are saying to our clients, those contractors, look, we're happy, guys, to suspend contract, right? So in other words, the time, however long it might be, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks that we're in lockdown that you cannot physically build, we're happy to push that back, right? But ultimately, what we're not going to do is pay for your staff, right? So you've got to suck that up. Now, in the end, sucking up prelims, right, is going to be passed on to somebody. So what those clients probably don't really understand is the contractors are going to get it back somehow. But bearing in mind that those prelims, including staff costs, could be anywhere between 4% and 10% of most contractors' turnover, right? If they're doing nothing for 4 weeks, that's that's 8%, right? So that's 8% of a company's turnover for the year potentially. So
you're likely to see some companies really struggle then to get through this period.
I think. You'll see. I'm going to be a guest on a guy called Jeremy Brim's podcast, and Jeremy Brim has brought out kind of the 100-day look forward plan. And one thing that he has highlighted, which I think is absolutely correct, is that no matter how long this lasts, and we don't ultimately know the outcome or outcomes, one thing that's for sure is that the landscape won't look like the landscape did beforehand. There's going to be companies that have folded. There's going to be companies that are in distress. There's going to be companies who performed but didn't perform as well as the companies that have really pulled through on it and done incredibly well. I think there's going to be an acuter look at businesses' balance sheets after this, and obviously credit which is pretty much frozen at the moment, is going to be the key question. Our industry is absolutely reliant on supply chains and credit between those supply chain partners, and all it needs is a freezing, and very much like you saw in the banking crisis, the whole thing is on the verge of collapse. So I think it'll be. I think ultimately none of us know, but one thing we can be sure to say is that the landscape will be different in 3 to 6 months.
And what have you seen? Are all construction sites basically closing as of today? Is today the last day they're allowed?
So every client who hasn't already completely shut, which is the majority, are generally adopting a three-pronged approach. What they're saying is, number one, can we maintain 2 meter social distancing? Can we do that realistically? If not, let's shut the site. The second thing they're saying is, look, can we get our supply chain there? It's great if we turn up, but fundamentally, if Joey Green electricians and Bob Plumber don't turn up, well, we can't carry on. And the third thing they're saying is, look, ultimately, if nobody can physically get there because of restrictions on public transport or no ability to park, we can't build either. And actually, there's quite an interesting story where one of my clients has had a pretty robust response from one of their clients, which is a major London hotel. We won't discuss who it is, where they've said, no, you've got to crack on. We're going to hold you to your contractual period. We're going to hold you to your program. Coronavirus, your issue. At which point, my client has responded by saying, well, look, if you won't allow us to suspend program, then we can't be responsible for any repercussions caused by not being able to affect 2 meter distancing, for example. So, Mr. Client, if you're happy to take responsibility for that, we'll crack on. Funnily enough, they found that those clients aren't prepared to take that liability, and hence the sites have shut. Yeah. You can't, no matter how clever the contractor is, nobody's able to run sites at the moment in skyscrapers. because you need lifts to get up and down, and you can't maintain that social distance of 2 metres in most lifts in London. The sites that are still going on are anything that obviously the government deems critical, and you've probably seen the kilometre long XL conversion, which is a very sobering / scary, but B, heartening to think that Cobra's kicking in and construction is playing its part. It's also worth saying that I've spoken to 2 clients this week who have been contacted by the government to use their prefabricated solutions for accommodation / hospital usage. So in other words, if you can build boxes that we can stick beds in with nurse call alarms and medical gases and anything else, we want them. How quickly can you get them into London? And don't be surprised if you end up seeing Hyde Park full of prefabricated units, full of hospital beds. I think that's coming, Sean.
Wow. So it feels like it's just taking more and more shape all the time. I watched a film last night on Amazon Prime, the Contagion movie.
Oh yeah.
Probably shouldn't have watched that. It didn't help me sleep, let me tell you that. And it was
It's Gwyneth Paltrow, isn't it?
Yeah, filmed in 2011, and it's fucking incredible how similar. Like the things they talk about, the phrase social distancing, which I'd never heard of before, was used in that film, and it is. I mean, there's a million theories as to what's going on and why people are doing what they're doing, but I'm just no one knows, right? No one knows. What's it been like personally as the owner of a recruitment business, and how are you judging what you're doing every day for the news and what's going on?
Well, I think first of all, my heart goes out genuinely to anybody and any leaders within major recruiters. We've only got circa 15, 20 staff to worry about. If you've got thousands or hundreds of thousands of staff to worry about, that's a big deal. So we're just a little business, and we've been pretty agile. We all, including myself, have elected to take 25% pay cuts. There's a number of the staff who have voluntarily elected to run into the government's furlough scheme, which I think we should all be very thankful for. We've not made it compulsory. We've invited staff to do that, and to be honest, we've had a pretty good take up, because it's pretty disheartening as a recruiter to be making every phone call and being knocked back, or finding out that another member of the team has been laid off, or people are desperate for work. So
yeah, it's crazy. What I don't know if you know more than me. The whole furlough scheme, I think, is good, and it's a bit dangerous as well, because if you choose not to take it and let people go, then it's kind of, people come back and say, well, I've had loads of reports of people saying, well, we've let people go because we don't think that we've got the business for them. Yet they're then coming back saying, well, you can't do that because the government have put a scheme together. It's like, well, just because that scheme's there doesn't mean we need to use it. The scheme is great, but it runs out. Like, there's no guarantee that scheme's going to go beyond the end of May.
Yeah. So 31st of May, 1st of March to the 31st of May. So what's my view? As you know, Sean, I've got a pretty poor view of most recruitment consultants. I think most clients are quite rightly sceptical of most recruitment consultants. I'm proud to say that, we are what I'd put in probably the top 10%. So I think the industry needed to shake out anyway. Whether or not this was the method to do it, it's a bit harsh. Yeah. But the industry needed to shake out. The industry needed a check on the quality that it was providing, number one. And I think this is the catalyst to do it. I think, however many as a percentage of the UK's recruiters will be out of work, not just short term, but long term. I think only time will tell. But do I think, for me personally, because I'm quite I'm very fastidious about who I employ, and we only employ, well, I don't know, probably 1 in 20 individuals that I interview. It's not really affected me. You know, the people that I've put in furlough, I want back again, right? I can't say that for most recruiters. I think, and unfortunately, you're right. I think some individuals will go back to those companies, and they probably shouldn't have had a job in the first place.
But it's also, are the businesses in the same shape? So it's all good at saying you want someone back, but if your business is decimated compared to what it was when you had that person, you've then got the liability of that wage coming back into the business when you might not be the same business. I mean, again, it's a short period of time. People should survive April, May, and be able. But if this does drag and it gets extended 3 more months, and the government say, yeah, we'll pay from June, July, August. How many companies by August that have paid their existing staff and they've got all these other workers coming back into the payroll are going to be in a position where they can take that hit of, that's a big financial outlay when you've had 6 months or 5 months of no revenue or lower revenue. I mean, it's something to really think about. I think the government have released a scheme that I think, I love it, but it's created more questions than anything else for me. It's just created a load of questions.
Well, I think the other issue you'll find is fraud. Right? How many unscrupulous agents, and there are many, recruiters will look officially offloading their overhead to take a break and keep their guys working, but not pay for them and saddle the taxpayer with it. I can see that happening. So I think that's a problem. I think fraud will end up being a problem, and I welcome whatever. And I'm about to say the revenue, but I don't know which instrument the government will use to create the checks and balances. I'm presuming it's the revenue. So I think that'll be interesting. I think most good companies' balance sheets will take a month or two's cash flow hit of having to pay for people you've just laid off bizarrely, to then be paid back by the government. I don't think most will struggle with that, but I think the big piece, and we had this conversation with our staff, is look, what does it mean to be laid off and to be put in furlough? Well, for me, it's just about effectively putting you on ice and then being able to take you back off ice as soon as possible. Now, do I think that will be at the pre-25% staff reduction? Don't know. I don't know how quickly I can get you back on board and get you back up to earning what you were earning in February, right? Yeah. I don't know. But the intent is certainly there. So yeah. I agree with you. How quickly balance sheets can deal with that, I don't know. There's obviously still a lot of uncertainty about how the mechanics and the detail of the furlough scheme. How quickly us as employers will get paid back, don't know. Obviously, I'm hoping it's no longer than 8 weeks. And then, like I said, I hate to say it, but I do think it does leave the door open for fraud, which I'm hoping the revenue or whoever can deal with, well.
Yeah, I agree. It's just not it's not an open goal. Like, that's just the obvious thing to do. People need to consider it. What do you honestly think is going to happen over the next few months? Like, how long do you think we're going to be in this, and it's going to affect businesses, recruitment businesses in the UK and abroad?
So for us, we're planning on 3 to 6 months. We're hoping it's going to be 3 months. It could be 6 months. We're not projecting doing anything in permanent revenue for 8 to 12 weeks. I've only got 2 pieces of executive search left, but you can appreciate that because fundamentally that's not going to start until Q4, Q1 next year anyway. But I think for me, as an owner of a small agile business, it's about trying to predict what clients will want and when they will want it. So we're going to be launching something called our ST 3 or ST cubed product in the next week or so, which aims to kind of provide good value, cost certainty, reliability in terms of contractor plus, and then it provides clients again with cost savings at usual quality standards if they have got business critical needs and want to go down a PAYE route, because fundamentally this is a blip, right? And to that end, there's two interesting conversations I've had in the last couple of days. In fact, 3. Historically, we've worked with a large investment vehicle of a major global sovereign wealth fund, right? Top 10 global sovereign wealth fund, one of its 2 major investment vehicles. And they remain extremely bullish about London, the UK, and Europe, right? Number one, that was a conversation that happened Wednesday this week. They're still buying, they're still developing. That, you know, it will, and by the time that space is ready to let, or that space is ready to sell, they think we're going to be through this. So that's number one. The second conversation was with somebody, again, another major pension fund, Canadian pension fund with major projects in London. Most people will know who that is, who remain very bullish and are continuing with their development program. And then the third one was with a consultant, a very well respected due diligence / project finance guy, who again said, look, fundamentally, liquidity is low, you know, liquidity is high. Relatively, if you look at interest rates nominally around the world, they're negative, you know, they are. Number 2, there's still good cash flow internationally. Investors have got to invest somewhere. It's not like the UK, COVID-19 is specific to the UK. It's a global problem. So as a result, we've got to invest somewhere. You know, why would we fundamentally change our investment plans based on COVID-19 where it's hitting everywhere, you know? So I'm relatively bullish about Q4 this year, a bit shaky about Q3, and obviously this quarter, all we can do really, survive today to be ready to thrive tomorrow. And we've got to be agile, we've got to be bright, we've got to be open and candid. And I guess the final thing I was going to say was I got a ticking off from one client who is a friend / client last week for what he thought was being quite insensitive in looking at engaging him on pitching a product to try and survive, you know, to try and keep people in work and keep us in work. And I turned around to him and I said, look, hold up, you know, I appreciate that potentially this could cost, you know, 500,000 deaths. Potentially, you know, the human impact of this just in the UK is massive. Globally, it's massive. But fundamentally, we got to keep working. Fundamentally, we've got to survive. We've got to be ready so that hopefully when we're through at least this stage of the virus, that we're ready to have as many families fed as humanly possible. The interesting thing will be, economically, will we end up with a debt bundle that's a similar size to, you know, what we faced after the Second World War, which ultimately means higher taxes in the long term?
Yeah, I think without a doubt we will. Without a doubt, just how big and how long that'll last. Tony, if you were advising someone who was a smaller recruitment business than yours, say they were a couple of years in, or even in the first year, I know a few brands that have just started out in the last January, and you think, fucking hell, what advice would you give to these people now, knowing you've been in the game longer? What would you say to someone who's a lot earlier in their owner career?
I think the key is it's an overhead management piece. Just manage your overhead. Literally penny pinch. Make sure you don't spend on anything you don't need to. Be self-sufficient. don't run away with crazy notions of spending £5,000 on advertising campaigns or any of that. Keep hold of the pennies, keep hold of the pounds, be very cost sensitive, and on the one hand, and then on the sales front, your clients probably aren't ready to buy yet, but keep engaged, and keep them engaged to be ready for when they do want to sell. What does that mean? Survival in the short term? Eat soup and drink water. We just got to get through it.
Yeah. Do you know what? In some ways, I think taking work away and just looking at the personal side of life now, we're all going to get used to a much more simple existence, right? So we ain't going to eat as extravagant restaurants. We're not going to be going out shopping. We're not going to be traveling around, and we're going to all spend less, be more resourceful. However long this lasts, I hope that doesn't. I mean, I know we need people to go out spending, consumer activity drives the economy, but still, I think we're too materialistic at times as people. And that's one knock on I'm hoping does last. People are a bit more resourceful, a little bit more conscious of just blowing money for the sake of it, just living for this. Do you know what I mean? It's gonna change the way we see things, I think.
Put it this way, I hope it does. I hope it does. And actually, there's a lot that's been said, or certainly that I've read, that talks about COVID-19 being, a gift sent from the universe, or certainly for the earth, as kind of as one of the wake-up calls. I think the world over the last certainly 5 years is starting to wake up to the environmental impact of our behaviour, the impact on each other, the impact on poorer nations through global warming, tsunamis, and I think this is the last in a long line of wake up calls that says to us, look, unrolled consumerism and the drive for economic growth needs to be checked and balanced with care for the planet and kind of care for each other. I think this is this is the most recent in a line of.
Yeah, I agree.
Well,
Toni, thanks for taking the time, mate, on a Friday lunchtime. I'm sure you've got the kids to play with and all sorts to deal with. If anyone who's listened today who enjoyed it and they wanted to reach out to you personally and ask you some questions, you open for that?
Yeah, absolutely. And
LinkedIn, best place to get you?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn, and like whether you're a competitor, a client, candidate, welcome the interaction. If we can help at all, we'd welcome it.
Brilliant. Thank you, mate. Thanks again. And guys, thanks so much for listening. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode and you're getting value from what I'm trying to produce every day. If you are enjoying it, then please do share this. Put it in your WhatsApp groups, your text groups, send it out on LinkedIn to people, share your comments, because at the end of the day, the only thing I ask for, this is a free service, the only thing I ask for is for you to share it. That's the fee, is give it out to other people. Let's get more and more people listening, and we will help each other, and we'll survive this whole thing. We will get through it. I'll be back again tomorrow with another advisor, recruitment owner, someone with lots of knowledge that we can all learn from. In the meantime, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.